Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. This is Get It Right with Atara Solutions. Welcome to the web. Today is 21st of March. Oh my God, where is time going? Yani, it just feels like yesterday that we started the webinars on season 4. My God, where is time? Or is it me who is growing old? I do not know. But yes, all right. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Grace Nzula. I am a HR consultant and trainer with Atara Solutions. Atara Solutions is a HR consulting and training firm. For all your training needs, please reach out to us. We will come and help you capacity build your staff, also create awareness. And one of the things we do is the topic that we are discussing here today. We help you and support you with your investigations. We also support you in giving you independent, independent views, depending on what's happening in the workplace. But as well, we are a one-stop shop for all your training needs. So whatever training you need, please know that Atara Solutions is there for you. Now, my name is Grace Nzula. Like I said, a lot of people refer to me as the moderator of choice, which I love. And this is Get It Right with Atara Solutions, a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. We are on season 4 now. Our seasons are pretty long. Anyone in the media industry will ask you, what do you mean a season that took a whole year? Yes. We started in 2020 during COVID. We did 26 episodes on season 1. We then did something in 2021, 2022, and now we are on 2023 in season 4. And all these things, you can find them, all the recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel, which is Get It Right with Atara Solutions, and we will be sharing the link. Of course, if you want to keep it Atara Solutions, we do this every Tuesday from 8 p.m. And we will share with you the WhatsApp link to our WhatsApp group. You can get to know what's coming up on Atara Solutions so that you don't get left out. We are live. You guys are tuned in, and I hope you're ready for tonight, because we have a very interesting discussion. And with us here, before I go to who we are with, so Get It Right with Atara Solutions is brought to you by Atara Solutions in partnership with a number of organizations. And allow me to just give a shout out to our partners who enable us or have joined hands with us to bring these sessions to you. I am telling you guys, without them, I don't think we would be doing this. So even if sometimes I'm being told that, Grace, you're giving a shout out too long, I'm like, do you prefer that I charge you 2,000 bob for this session, or can I just take 10 minutes and tell people who have supported us in bringing this? All right, so we have Balcon Housing. Balcon Housing is a real estate and property management company. If you're looking to invest in a piece of land, if you're looking to get people to manage your property, then Balcon Housing will be the people for you. If you're looking to sell a piece of land as well, they would be able to support you on that. We have Stallion Construction Limited. Stallion Construction, like the name spells it, is a construction company. They, if you're looking to construct a house, if you're looking to construct an office, any building that you wish to construct, if you're looking to also renovate your office, renovate your house, subdivide a new office you've gone into, or just create more room in your office, then Stallion Construction Company Limited are your go-to people. We also have Pathway Solution Services. Pathway Solution Services are a HR consulting and training firm as well. They have offered a lot of our people, and our people, I mean the people who tune in to Get It Right with Atara Solutions, sessions on their LMS. They have a learning management system that has a lot of information, and they also offer certificates at the end of once you're done training. LMS, you actually learn by yourself. So you log in, they give you a login, you keep learning. There's a test at the end of the session. Then if you score above 65%, you get a certificate. So that is what Pathway Solutions Services does. Frank, we appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us in season 3. And thank you for also agreeing to join us again in season 4. And of course, we have HRMPEB. HRMPEB is the Human Resource Management Professional Examination Board. This is the board that examines HR professionals in Kenya. If you're looking to do your CHRP, CHRP is a certified human resource professional. And this is not for Kenyans only. I know we have a lot of people from around the world today. So if you're looking to just become a certified human resource professional, then you can take the classes with the exams with HRM PEB. They also, for Kenyans, we also get gazetted. You appear in the Gazette notice. That means you are certified to actually practice human resource management in Kenya. So if you haven't done your CHRP and you're wondering how exemptions work, you're wondering how the exams are booked or anything around CHRP, I mean CHRP, please get in touch with me. Yes, I like saying I am CHRP Grace Nzula. I am also CPM Grace Nzula, which CPM is Certified Professional Mediator, which I did with Suluhu Mediation Center, who are also our partners here. If you're looking to become a certified professional mediator, please join Suluhu Mediation Center. Their sessions are wonderful. They have actually, you can learn online. You don't have to go to their physical sessions, but if you prefer learning physically, then you can still join their physical sessions, which they have a calendar for. You get in touch with me, this is an area of interest, then I'll be happy to link you up. Then we have Profiles International. Profiles International are the people who deal in people skills, actually. They have the Geno Certified Emotional Intelligence Coach, which is if you want to become a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, they offer the Genos model, and they have the class that started on the 15th of March. I hope you guys have joined the class, but they also have DISC assessments. This is a personality test that is very, very detailed. I love their DISC assessments. I think it's better than any other personality test I've ever taken. And then, of course, they have what do we call these tests that we give for interviews? What do we call them? Okay. Kevin, remind me that name.
The pre-assessment test.
Yeah, not the pre-assessment. Psychometric tests. Yes. They offer psychometric tests. So if you're an HR professional on this call and you wish to subject your people to psychometric tests, then Profiles International are your go-to people. And then, of course, we have Elsamea. Elsamea is a hotel in Naivasha. If you're looking to take a holiday, a personal, a solocation, a bikeation, I mean, Easter is already around the corner. And if you also have conferences, they have just finished their conference hall. So you can go down to Elsamea. It's a beautiful, quiet, and nice place right at the front of the lake. Like you just sit there as you're having your lunch out in the garden. You can just see the lake. You can imagine everything. There's a lot of clarity, a lot of fresh air. And then if you're spending the night, you also get to see hippos and giraffes and all these things that come at night. So for the bold ones, then Elsamea, you need to visit Elsamea. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And then we have Steadfast Quality Solutions Limited. Steadfast Quality Solutions Limited are our partners in Kampala. Hello, Herbert Zake. This is the firm headed by Herbert Zake. Herbert Zake he's my good friend, and also he supports us in sharing our flyers in Kampala. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, and he runs a HR consulting and public relations company in Kampala. We appreciate you, Herbert, really, really. Personally, I really appreciate you, and I'm sure the team at Atara Solutions does as well. And then we have Wicklin. Wicklin is a carpet cleaning company. If you wish to have your, by the way, the rains have come. Please don't stay with a dirty carpet because you don't know when they will dry. Wicklin does carpet cleaning in pronto. Like they pick up your carpet today, within 6 minutes, they are done, but they will bring it tomorrow because of the pickup and delivery. And pickup and delivery is free around Nairobi. And then, of course, we have Kapula Mintito. I have been enjoying their mabuyus for the last week because I was in Mombasa a week ago. Their mabuyus are out of this world. Of course, they deal with other coastal snacks. And then we have Panessa Training Institute. If you wish to become a carpenter, please talk to me. Panessa Training Institute, we will train you on how to become a carpenter, and we have Saturday classes for those of you who are working and have a passion to work with their hands. And of course, we have Papas. Papas deals with the technology. They have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ERP system and also a HR system. If you wish for people to customize your HR system, then speak to me and I'll link you up with Papas. All right, and thank you very much for listening to me for that one. And now here we are. Tonight's topic is a very, very interesting topic. I am telling you, I think myself, Patson, and Anne, the things we have gone through. Oh yeah, and before I get there, please, Kevin, introduce yourself. I had forgotten you.
No, it's actually quite in order because today's topic, as you've mentioned, is one of a kind and it touches almost everyone, if not all. As you've heard, my name is Kevin Adipo. I work with Atara Solution as a HR consultant, and it's HR is passion, and that is why we have to do this every Tuesday. And as I told you during the beginning of the year, this year it's going to be amazing. And so far, all of you can attest to it. Back to you, Grace.
All right, thank you very much. I see we have someone from South Africa. I see someone else from everywhere. Anyway, okay. So Tarasoni, if you got my email address, I'll share with you my email address, and then you can send me the question, and then I'll get an answer for you. Yes. So allow me to also recognize we have our sign language interpreter, Catherine Sidandi. Catherine Sidandi, we appreciate you. Thank you for always making the sacrifice to be here every Tuesday. By the way, you guys, Catherine is looking for a job. If you need sign language interpreters in your place, and she's also a social worker, so she can also do social work and help you in your organizations as you become more inclusive. Thank you, Catherine, for making us inclusive. And of course, we have our panelists. We have my dear good friend, who is Anne Wamonje. Anne Wamonje works with Atara Solutions. So today we are Atara Solutions full. Yes, I told you guys, we are here because we actually offer sexual harassment trainings as a company, but we also support you with investigations. We also support you in advisory when such cases are happening in your organization. So we have Anna Wamonje, who is an HR consultant with Atara Solutions. And of course, we have Patson, Wilbroad, Arinaitwe. Hey! By the way, Herbert, you owe me classes for Ugandan names. Why can't everyone just be called Herbert Zake? Anyway, the other day he was stressing me with Brian. Now we are here with Patson, but we appreciate this. And Patson is a lawyer and also an HR. So this is an area of interest for Patson because he comes wearing two hats, and we really, really are grateful. Now, I am going to ask you, Patson, maybe we can start with Anne. Anne, you can do a brief introduction and also tell us what sexual harassment is to you. And then we'll move that to Patson, who will do a brief introduction of himself, do a brief presentation, and then we'll come back and do the questions. Is that fine, Anne? And Anne, you look very beautiful today. Hey, hey. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Grace, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you also for the compliment. I appreciate that. I look beautiful every day. Please take note. Thank you. All right. So today's subject is on sexual harassment. And I understand that people define sexual harassment differently based on who you're asking. But then at the end of the day, if you are complaining about sexual harassment, the first thing you need to understand is what is the legal definition of sexual harassment as far as the existing laws of Kenya are concerned. So I think Patson would tell us about the Ugandan definition of sexual harassment. But as far as the Employment Act in Kenya is concerned, you can be able to claim sexual harassment if you can show or prove that there have been direct or indirect suggestions or requests of sexual intercourse or requests of sexual favors, that in the end, the person that is making these requests will be able to provide you with, say, preferential treatments, or they are threatening to take detrimental action against you if you fail to agree to these requests. At the same time, these things can be able to come in the form of use of language, that sometimes people make comments or insinuations that are sexually related, that are offensive to the employee. And when you are defining sexual harassment, one of the keywords that we use is unwelcomed. Because sometimes somebody may be able to be using all these words and insinuations and sending you all these visuals and doing all this sexual stuff to you, but you are okay with them. But if we move away from not being okay and we add in the aspect of unwelcome, then it becomes a form of sexual harassment. So we've said it can be in physical touch, use of language, it can be use of materials, or physical behavior that is suggestive. You know, those people that, I don't know, Grace, you will help me here, but those people who probably want to get up in the office and twerk suggestively to send a message. I'm not very sure whether that would be categorized under sexual harassment. But the point I'm putting across here, it has to be unwelcomed. So if you are saying, I am not okay with that, and you tell your colleague or your boss or whatever, and they persistently do that, then you are probably being sexually harassed, or rather you are being sexually harassed. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that summary. And now to Patson, tell us, you can do the presentation as you introduce yourself as well. You are on mute.
Yes, thank you very much, Grace and Atara Solutions, for this opportunity to interact with the East Africans. I consider myself East African not only because of my nature of practice, but also as family. So every time I'm speaking to the Kenyan audience, as if I'm speaking to family as well. Patson is my name. I'm a partner at Signum Advocates in Kampala. 90% of my work really rotates around people. I support businesses in terms of policies, trainings, as well as litigation in court. I've done that for the last 14 years. After that, really, I pride myself now going back to assist businesses and organizations to be compliant, which I enjoy probably more than courts. So you allow me just share a few slides before we get into Q&A, so that to put things in context. Yeah, so particularly we're defining what sexual harassment is, and I think from my colleague's definition, it's not indifferent from the Ugandan context. When we talk of what sexual harassment is, it comes either express or implied. It can be direct or indirect, but more important, it relates to work activities. One key aspect that I found a bit different from when I compared Uganda and Kenya was the fact that sexual harassment in Kenya can happen with a representative of the employer who is not necessarily in authority. The two laws, one key differentiator is the fact that in Uganda, the employer's representative who is sexually harassing the other must be either in authority over the employee or should be in position of authority in the organization. That distinction, is quite clear. And probably as we expand on what it is, you note that the sexual favors that are being extended or the threats, first of all, the person who is sexually harassing either is promising preferential treatment at work or threatening treatment at work, or the implied or express threat about the present and future employment status. So that becomes, very critical. It could be present or future. It could be preferential or negative treatment. So all those, affect or relate to what we call sexual harassment. And I'm sure some of you who have seen sexual harassment or have experienced it, you'll note that the traditional HR policies only relate to the physical. But either it can happen as verbal, it could be visual, it could be physical. And I think in the age of internet now, with social media, there's quite a lot that goes into the social media in terms of writing. And that becomes very important even as we draft the policies relating to sexual harassment. And I want to go through this, probably to come back in Q&A, but to indicate that the definition of sexual harassment is so broad. And sometimes a relationship at work, there's a thin line between a relationship at work and sexual harassment where you have somebody in authority or superior to the other. And maybe the major concern that comes through is how about the boy child? Sexual harassment has existed over the years. I think as far as women and men have shared the same space, there's been sexual harassment. But we note that over the years, probably women or females have been victims. Does that mean that the boy child cannot face sexual harassment? At least the laws of both countries do not clearly indicate that it has to be a female, which means that indeed actually a male can actually suffer sexual harassment as well. And they're usually borderline cases. I wanted to pick this particular WhatsApp chat. I've tried to blur the names or numbers, but it's a live story that happened in a conversation that you can sometimes you can't know whether it's sexual harassment, is it flirting, is it consensual? And you wake up in the morning and a supervisor receives a message, "Good morning, sir." There's an emoji of hearts. "Did you receive my appraisal?" That one, not one of your best performances. I would want, for those who are viewing the slides, I want you to pay attention to the emojis used. Not one of your best performances, and you have gunshots. But we can do something about it. There's a wink face. I hope you know what you mean. You have some smiley faces as well, used as emojis. But sir, what do you mean? There's that emoji covering the face. Is it suggestive? Does it mean it is welcome? And you have other emojis that have come through that some of you who are good with the internet, you'll know what they mean. Do you get the idea, or do you want to remain a junior officer? That statement is massive. But Emma, do you know I have a boyfriend? Well, Wamonje. Wamonje in Uganda, it means, it's you who knows. Now, some situations you can find such a conversation. And as people who sit on disciplinary or investigating sexual harassment, it may not be easy to tell the difference. Is it suggestive? Is it sexual harassment? Has it been actually invited by the female? I think from the conversation you can see it's originated by a female. So with social media and the use of emojis, it may not be as easy to detect as possible unless you are dealing with millennials who are able to detect some of these emojis that are used in the conversation. But in grand scheme of things, when we are discussing sexual harassment, once the fact that it is unwelcome, as my colleague has indicated, the impact of that sexual harassment, it impacts on the job-related decision. It could be firing, it could be promoting. And as long as the impact of such relates to such, then it is considered sexual harassment. But also, it can create a hostile work environment, especially where it is not welcome. And the last part is the fact that it seems to create a quid pro quo, this for that. Sexual favors for either favorable treatment at work or to avoid unfavorable treatment at work, both present and future. And you need to also appreciate the workplace is quite expansive, as you might know it. You might think of it from the corporate office point of view, but workplaces can relate to locations, premises, establishments, sometimes to and from work. Company parties, you might be on retreat away from the workplace. All those can actually be construed as a workplace for sexual harassment purposes. So even if it happens on a retreat 100 kilometers away from the head office, that can still be considered sexual harassment. Yes, I think I will stop here for now. Since the context was within regard what amount of sexual harassment, probably I will come back later as we discuss. Over to you, Grace.
All right, thank you for that, Patson. I think we are getting the gist of things. And I welcome the audience to also ask as many questions as they can. But before we start taking their questions, I have seen there's one question here. Okay, so the other day, I got a call. actually it was yesterday, I got a call from a lady who is an HR professional in an organization that's male dominated. She was actually the only lady in management, and she's had to resign because she's being picked on because she has refused to actually sleep with one of the directors. And so it has become so it became so bad that she actually had to quit. Now, question is, must we always, like, what can we do to actually protect ourselves? And especially on the balance between you're being harassed and you need the job. And you can speak from a lady, and Patson will give us the male perspective.
I think it is very important for every employee to understand
We
that
can't
whether
hear
you're
you.
working. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're a bit distant, but yes.
Oh, okay. So what I'm saying is, it's important for every employee to understand that whether you're working in HR or you are in management or you are working as a junior employee, when you are being sexually harassed or you feel that you are being sexually harassed, you have an obligation from your end to do something about it. And what does that mean? One, you need to be able to speak out. Because generally, when sexual harassment is happening to you, first you need to understand the policy of the organization around sexual harassment. And when I'm talking about policy, here what I mean is, first, does the company have a clear policy on this? How do you report sexual harassment? Because when you read through the policy, you will know that you are supposed to report to person A or B when this is happening. So let's say, for instance, this is a HR person who is facing this. Then now the reporting has to go to somebody who is senior to the HR, probably their supervisor. Unfortunately, in this case, it might be that their supervisor is the one that they are experiencing the harassment from. They can always report it to another senior member of the company who is on the same level as their supervisor. Because once you do this, then you have given the company the opportunity to investigate and take action about it. Should they fail to do that, then you can be able to now seek legal redress outside of the organization, because it will be assumed that you have exhausted all the internal dispute resolution mechanisms that were available, but you have not gotten help. But then if you don't say anything about it, you don't report it, and then you opt to resign from the job, then later on come back and claim sexual harassment, there might be a challenge on your end, with the first question being, did you let your employer know about it first? And did they do something, or did they fail to do something about it? So if you are experiencing this, whether you're junior or senior, you have to take the first steps, and there is a bit of responsibility from your end to be able to initiate the process. And don't just pack and leave just because you're being sexually harassed, because you may not have helped the situation as much. Maybe you have moved away from that scenario, but what happens if the next organization you go to, you find that the situation is the same or worse? So you must be able to stand up for yourself and do what you can at that time. Then now, if you fail to get the help that you need, you can register a complaint around that. Thank you, Grace. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Before we jump on to you, Patson, everyone who is trying to type their email addresses on the chat, please note we already have your email addresses because you registered for the webinar. So if you can, kindly don't put it on the chat, because you're going to lose some of the comments that are related to the conversation. And then, but note, we actually have your email addresses and we will share. My team has also put in the YouTube channel where the recording will be uploaded by Friday this week. So you don't need to put your email addresses on the chat. I repeat, please do not put your email addresses on the chat. We already have them because you registered to attend the webinar, and we're going to share with you the recording on your emails after that. Now, what is your take on this, Patson, especially from a legal point? Because a case here is all the directors are sexual predators. So what do you do?
Yeah, like from the Ugandan perspective, you will note that the sexual harassment law actually envisages that people who harass are people who are superior. I found it interesting that in Kenya, they expect actually sexual harassment can be at the same level, which I think is innovative. Now, you will note that the reason why most sexual harassment cases do not come up is a fear of losing the job. With the level of unemployment in East Africa, I think in Uganda, we are above 70%. People think twice before they report sexual harassment. They fear, repercussions. Even where you have fear, where you have even a witnesses themselves fear losing jobs. That becomes a daunting experience for a victim. It's usually your word against mine. And you can imagine somebody in junior position accusing a director of the company. That's a grave accusation. And if you don't have evidence, chances are that they will say these are false allegations, get out of here. So it's quite challenging. And I think from the corporate culture point of view, creating a safe environment for reporting becomes necessary. And probably later we can talk about policies and how that is structured. I handled a case where a driver of an MD of an organization was being sexually harassed by the female MD. Now this is a driver being harassed by a female MD. Every time they go for trips, she would book one room for both of them. The gentleman had kids to pay for school fees for. And I got to know this because he confided in me and said, look, I have 5 kids to pay school fees for. I cannot afford to report this matter. So you have challenges, and I've read a couple of cases from Kenya where courts themselves have recognized that it is personal, it becomes challenging. And therefore the standard of even proof, they have tried to lower it. As long as the employee shows that they have been sexually harassed, then the burden shifts to the employer to say there's no sexual harassment. We have system to detect and to deal with it. Now, from the African culture point of view, it becomes even challenging for a male child to report that I've been sexually harassed by a female. Especially with the Ugandan society said, what do you mean? It's almost inconceivable that a male will be sexually harassed, but many are being harassed. But so we have society issues where either it's accommodated. What do you mean that you've been sexually harassed? Maybe it's you, maybe it's your dressing, maybe it's the way you are rotating around the gentleman. For a man, said, what do you mean? Because you are probably, male is considered masculine, they don't expect harassment from a female. So from the point of what do we do, I think the culture, and as HR practitioners, is something that probably they need to work on to ensure that there's a safe environment for reporting. And possibly the channel is totally different from the people who are in authority, like directors. Most of the policies indicate that organizations should designate a person responsible for sexual harassment and shouldn't be the alpha and omega. They are asking companies to establish sexual harassment committees. And maybe when you have, and depending on how you handle the first complaint, will dictate whether people will come through. If they think you can actually report and to be dealt with, then you start creating a culture of transparency. And but the perpetrators will also appreciate that actually, if they do, they can be reported and to be acted upon.
Okay. Wow. This sexual harassment there's a very thin line, to what is called sexual harassment and what's not. So there's somebody who is saying, actually, Patson, you're right. In Kenya, not only in Kenya, where sexual harassment is at right now, it's senior to junior, same level, or junior to senior. And this is not gender. In fact, somebody said that women have gone through this more than men. I agree to some extent, but men have also suffered. It's just because men don't speak up that we also never hear from them. In fact, one of my friends the other day was like, sometimes there's a woman who touched his abs. He has a six-pack. So there's a woman who was touching his abs, and yeah, they were laughing about it. And then the next day he came and touched her hair and sijui neck, and the whole story changed. And you see, it was very difficult because he was accused of sexual harassment, but the lady was not accused of sexual harassment. So it's kumsa kumse, it's Now there's a question here. My God, the questions are coming. And those of you who have not heard me, please do not share your email addresses. We already have your email addresses. You're making us lose the conversation and the questions on the chat. I know we have questions on the Q&A, which we are getting into, but for now, allow us to ask, how do you handle sexual harassment from a family company where all top management are family related? I don't know whether, Anne, you want to take that?
Okay. When you are, I think one of the key things that I have said and we still need to emphasize is the fact that when we are looking at sexual harassment as an issue within the company, we do not just want to look at the company setup, that it's a public office or it's a private office or it's a family-owned business or whatever. For as long as it is an organization that is operating, when sexual harassment occurs, first, it is the duty of every employer. And by employer, I mean the company that you work for, not the son of the director or the whatever. It is the company that you work for that has issued you with an employment or contract. It is their duty to provide a safe working environment for you that is free from sexual harassment. So with that said, when you experience sexual harassment and you realize that the top management are all family related, it doesn't take away from you the fact that this is still your employer and you need to be able to do your part. You need to make a formal complaint. Yes, there are consequences, as Patson has explained. There is the fear of you will lose your job, or you will be embarrassed, or you will look like as the difficult employee or the ABCDEF. But you have to make a formal complaint. It is now the duty of the employer again to take action or to investigate this matter and do something about it. For as long as you have made the complaint formal, then now you leave it to them to be able to take action. If you don't see anything happening, then you send out a reminder. If something is still not happening and this is continuing, then you can be able to seek for outside help, because it is very obvious that at this point, you might not get the help that you require, but this is something that is affecting you and you need something to be done about it. And also, one of the emphasis that I need to put here is when you are taking legal action for issues of sexual harassment, you are free to be able to sue the company and also sue the person, the individual that is actually perpetrating this against you. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to use this.
And you have a problem with your sound.
Okay.
And you said a very important point. You can sue the person and the company.
Yes.
Let me
reiterate that. What I'm saying is, when you are taking legal action against an employer for sexual harassment, you are able to sue the employer as a company and also sue the individual that is actually perpetrating this. So for instance, it is Grace, I'm using you as an example, please. Thank you. So let's say, for instance, this is coming from Atara, and the person that you're experiencing the harassment from is Grace. You will sue Atara and then also add in Grace as part of the people that you are suing within this one complaint. So whether they are family related or they are not family related, the law is very clear around sexual harassment. Take up your responsibility and also seek help outside of the organization if you cannot find it within the company. Thank you.
All right. And for those of you who are saying that we need more female panelists on this panel, I am here as well. I actually train on sexual harassment, and Liz is saying, good evening, Patson. We have cases of female junior officers being sexually harassed by male managers. Therefore, failure to report and even take up supervisory roles within the organization due to threats. How do you support these females to stand up on their rights? Yes, Patson. And Liz, probably one thing that I can say is that you actually need harassment and bullying awareness training so that people can actually understand what they need to do. Because sometimes it's lack of knowledge, sometimes it's also lack of evidence as well, because sometimes if you go to court of law, and of course I'm sure Patson you'll echo this, if you go to a court of law, you are required to produce evidence, and that evidence may also come in form of witnesses. So I know when, especially it's one person suffering, especially from, sole proprietorship, your boss is harassing you and there's no one else you can report this to. And you don't have an HR, you don't have an HOD, this guy is the everything. So sometimes it helps. And I've had, we had a case in last year, and somebody reported to the HR, yes, but she had a caveat. She said, you cannot tell anyone. I do not want you to do anything about it. So what we did is we went in and did a sexual harassment and bullying awareness training. And we also informed them of what they can do and their rights. Because sometimes when you tell people about their rights, they realize, oh, okay, so there's a way out. As well, organizations can set up sexual harassment champions, where if you're not able to report to a particular individual, you have different champions who can support you in this one. And those are some of the ways that organizations can. I don't know whether, Patson, you have, I assumed the role of panelist in this one, but yes, I don't know whether you have something else to add.
Yes, I think what is critical is the fact that sexual harassment is personal. So the issue of reporting is still a challenge. By the virtue of how people are perceived, because of sexual harassment, whether victim or the perpetrator, it becomes very personal. I want to just pick a quote from one of the cases from Kenya, decided in 2021. And this is what the judge indicated in deciding in favor of the lady who was sexual harassed. They indicated that the cases and instances of sexual harassment are extremely personalized and difficult to prove. More often than not, these will not be documented, but they comprise of overt and covert overtures by the offending party. It is therefore expected that when this arises, action should be taken towards reporting or raising the same with the powers that be, the employer or his agents. Sometimes a prevailing environment may not be facilitative of this. It would therefore be unreasonable to employ the standard of burden of proof on matters of this nature. And you will note from the quote that courts are aware, they are alive to the fact that there won't be evidence. But they also want to see for the victim, what steps have you taken? You can imagine sometimes people are sexually harassed in 2015 and they want to report in 2022. Time has passed. So it becomes imperative that when such an act happens, it needs to be reported. The flip side of it is that sometimes victims want to benefit from the harassment. I'm sorry to indicate that, but sometimes they look at the opportunity and say, wait a minute, if my boss has extended this, can I make a few demands? Promotion, salary increment. When it doesn't come, that's when reporting happens. Now, most of the sexual harassment policies and the regulations, at least for the two countries, they require, first of all, the process should be confidential. Employers should have policies to ensure the process of investigating and dealing with sexual harassment is confidential so that people can come out and prepare a report. If it is not acted upon, it is actually a breach of the law, at least for Uganda and Kenya, for the employer to fail to implement sexual harassment policy. And the person can actually report to the labor office where they realize that the organizations have refused to implement sexual harassment policy statements. And both countries actually indicate what should be in the policy statements against sexual harassment. What amounts to sexual harassment? How should victims report? That the process should be confidential. It should be before an impartial panel. So even if you have family business, you should have people who are not involved prepare a report. After a sexual harassment committee is required to prepare a report and file it with the Labor Office, file it with the Commission of Labor in Uganda. So the process is intended to be, first of all, confidential, to allow confidential reporting. And I think every time an employer does not allow that process, then you are killing any possibility of reporting. And if a victim of sexual harassment decides to keep quiet, I'm imagining how you'll handle the workplace with the trauma, with the depression of knowing that your job actually will not be protected if you don't give in. If you give in and you don't report, it means that you might be caught by passage of time. And by the time you report, you've lost the WhatsApp chats, you've lost the call logs that might be important in proving, your case. Nowadays, we live in times of screenshots. Take a screenshot and keep. But now we have disappearing messages, and they might employ the perpetrators. But we've got to use technology on how to preserve, especially if you know somebody is getting into the space that is unwelcome. Then start preparing the evidence, because it will always be your one against the other. And if you've lost that track, you won't even be able to prove. And unfortunately for court, it becomes challenging. And maybe to mention, when I posted this training on my social media, I was actually shocked that almost every commentator, especially ladies, were able to tell that they have been sexually harassed almost in each and every workplace, including judicial officers. That's how dangerous it is in our community. And I think we owe it to the next person to report and to ensure, at least you report and complain that the employer has not acted on it than keeping quiet. Yeah.
The same question, maybe I digress if you allow. Majorly we've spoken about people who are in employment. How about those seeking employment, and define that people, or rather the managers, supervisors who they're seeking the job from are the ones taking advantage of them? How should they go about that?
Maybe I could just put this in. All of us probably are aware of the expose that was done by BBC on the tea farms in Kericho. So if you watch that whole episode, then you understand where that question is coming from. And sometimes somebody would be seeking for a job, and in the process of all this, they get themselves mixed up in the sexual harassment bit. And if we look at that expose, you realize that the person that was actually teaching the recruits about sexual harassment and how the company takes sexual harassment cases very seriously and where they should report all this blah blah blah, ended up being the main culprit or perpetrator in all this. So yes, there is a possibility that even in the process of looking for work, you will encounter such situations. It still does not take away the fact that you are being violated. If you can prove, the burden of proof in this point is on the complainant. If the complainant can be able to prove that, yes, I was at point A or B and this happened to me, then they have the ability to be lodge a complaint and wait for action to be taken. Yeah, Kevin, that would be my input on that.
Kevin, maybe if I may add,
Yes.
You will note that if you are seeking employment, then you are not yet in the employment space. And I've seen a couple of questions as well in regard to, in the hotel industry, you are dealing with clients. Sexual harassment by its very nature is intended to protect employment space. What that means that if you're not in an employment relationship, the protection will be something else. Luckily in Kenya, you have Sexual Offences Act that deals with sexual offences, indecent assault and the right. And so they're criminal offenses. Meaning, if you're not yet in the employment relationship, then you can take benefit of the Sexual Offences Act and report to police, because those are criminal activities. And I think for those seeking employment that are being told to extend favors would be part of Sexual Offences Act, and probably not necessarily sexual harassment, which is technically within the employment space. But I believe sometimes from the organizational point of view, you can expand the definition to cover even non-employees if you know that you want to deal with a victim. For instance, if a supervisor is harassing potential recruits, you can, in your definition of sexual harassment, can extend to clients, to suppliers, and to potential employees, so that it is a misconduct that is dealt with within the context of employment infraction than strictly in the sexual harassment space.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I had forgotten that we actually have the sexual harassment, whatever. So allow me at this. The chat I have not even opened. Allow me to also recognize the presence of Kenodia Wamonje. He is one of the founders of the Institute of Human Resource Management. He's actually over 70 years old, and he's here tonight. And of course, by virtue of my respect for him, his question will get preference. And Kenodia Wamonje, good evening. But yes, Kenodia is asking, what do you say about women employees who allege sexual harassment against bosses they do not like as a form of blackmail or revenge? Any of you can take that.
Let me say this, and he's used the word allege. And you see, at the end of the day, for this case to hold water, there has to be proof. And there are instances where these allegations are actually investigated and evidence has been found that there were actually instances of sexual harassment. So at this point, it is not even about whether you like them or you do not like them. The point here is, have they been able to prove that you were indeed sexually harassing them? Because also as an employer, you are not going to jump quickly into firing an employee or taking disciplinary action against them based on allegations. That is where the investigation comes in, and then you get the facts, and the complainant is able to present what they have as far as these allegations are concerned. And just to refer to what Patson was talking about, and there's the aspect of the Sexual Offences Act in Kenya. And then it is very clear, when you look at Section 23 of the Sexual Offences Act that talks about sexual harassment, and it says, it shall be necessary to prove in a charge of sexual harassment that the submission or rejection by the person to whom advances or requests are made is intended to be used as a basis of employment or of a decision relevant to the career of the alleged victim, or of a service due to a member of the public in the case of a public officer. And number two, the other bit that they will look at when you bring in the charge of sexual harassment is such advances or requests have the effect of interfering with the alleged victim's work or educational performance, or creating an offensive work or learning environment for the alleged victim, or denial of a service due to the member. So now, when you look at all these two aspects as far as burden of proof is concerned, this is where the basis of the allegations will be based. And it is you as the person who is complaining to come up with the necessary evidence and say, this is what happened to me. He did this or she did this and this and that. And now we are here. But Grace?
All right. I don't know whether you want to chime in, Patson?
Yes, I think the issue of blackmail is something that, again, is cropping up. We have millennials who know what they want. They know that there are some hyenas at workplace, sorry to use the language, and they want to ensure that they lay the traps. In Uganda, we call it okwetega. Okwetega means you lay a trap for somebody, to fall in. So what they do is to look at, they know somebody probably has a bit of weakness with ladies. So they just lay the trap, you swallow it. That's one way. And it speaks now in terms of how men or women are able to avoid conduct at workplace that is borderline. And it becomes challenging where the workplace is permissive of relationships at workplace. And when something that almost is either flirtatious or is intended to be consensual actually migrates into sexual harassment. The beauty is that the law actually, for both countries, Kenya and Uganda, caters for retaliation, false allegations. But you would want to ensure that in investigations, you rule out false allegation in terms of what has been the conduct over the months or days to indicate that this is a false allegation. And in most cases, something that starts as consensual. There's one thing one sexual harassment I investigated for an employer I represent, where one of the females just walked into the room of the supervisor, almost a few yards away, because there was an appraisal coming the following day. She went in the room, watched movies from midnight until 3 a.m. in the morning. There were appraisals. After the appraisals, promotion never happened. So when promotion never happened, you can imagine what happened. Sexual harassment claim. But we're able to investigate to demonstrate for somebody who has walked to your supervisor's room, the evidence or the charts actually indicate a casual or a friendly conversation. And in fact, actually, the lady was very suggestive as to why she's coming for a movie. And the committee was able to clarify that actually this is blackmail. But you'll note that in most cases, by the time you prove blackmail, the company's image is at stake because either one of the person that has actually gone into social media, if it is not handled well, or somebody's career who is being blackmailed has been spoiled. The committee will clear him, but there's a dent as somebody who is known as a sex predator at workplace. So it becomes very important that there are no conclusions that there's sexual harassment because the perpetuator could actually turn out to be the alleged perpetuator could turn out to be the victim of blackmail. His family has been probably destroyed. If he belongs to certain organizations that consider integrity important, they no longer see him. So between sexual harassment, you could find allegations that are bordering defamation. And that's why investigation becomes important to ensure that facts come out. They won't be easy because they're quite discreet. But I think the investigation should be very clear to try to rule out any blackmail or false allegation.
All right. And there's an interesting question here from Mildred who says, thank you, Grace and team, to Patson. What if it's verbal harassment in form of jokes that in turn makes employees sense toxicity, that is not reported or confronted? With time, one bold employee reports it, then investigations reveal many have been victims. Can such lead to dismissal? This is in Uganda.
For Uganda, that's absolutely, I would want to hear such allegations come out in the court. As I was preparing for this presentation, I went to our industrial court to ask if how many complaints of sexual harassment have been reported pending in court. Since industrial court was established in 2014, we've had only 2 cases reported. One was settled with a confidential clause. Another one is pending and probably it might be a non-starter. It shows, and I was happy to look at when I was searching for Kenya. For the last 5 years, I've seen almost more than 20 sexual harassment cases, and some of them are very successful. So Kenya is setting a very good example in terms of reporting and gaining traction. And I've seen some good judgments and awards against employers. But for Uganda, we have a culture of, don't speak ill of the bosses. You keep quiet. And a lot of sexual harassment has gone through unnoticed or unreported. So if one comes out clearly and reports, and there are other allegations, I think sometimes the investigation should not only center on one, but can be expounded to cover all others. And sexual harassment, even if there's no policy express, it is actually considered gross misconduct that would actually lead to summary dismissal, not even a warning. And the law requires that actually the employer must take action to stem out sexual harassment, train staff, and ensure that necessary steps are taken.
All right, that's for Uganda. Oh yeah, I've seen my friend Robly Ngoje. Robly, congratulations on your appointment to the board. We celebrate you, and I'll come back to your question. But there's one scenario here. There's somebody who says, and maybe you need to listen to this one, not necessarily because it needs an answer. In a scenario where the complaint was launched and nothing was done, requested for transfer, nothing was done, and the contract was not renewed. I have been victim, but I left the company. These are some of the realities that we are dealing with, because sometimes they will not listen. But we need to really, because we are organization leaders, everyone on this call, please, let us support our employees. Let us support our brothers and sisters. Let us create safe workplaces for our people. But there's another very, very important question that had come in. And I've seen the question on LGBTQ. Allow me not to dwell on that today. We will have a conversation about that when we're doing we will try and organize a webinar for inclusion and diversity, and then we can bring in the LGBTQ community there and the effect it has on your policies, because that falls there. Because we cannot discuss LGBTQ and you don't have an unique policy. What do we call it? You're not even inclusive in your organizations, but we'll discuss that. Now, there's another question that was asked, where the sexual harassment happens outside work premise, then the lady reports to the police, but the manager is released. But since the lady felt it wasn't enough, she brought it to the HR office. Anne, you want to take that, Madam HR?
Thank you, Chris. When we were starting the webinar, one of the things that Patson talked about is about the work environment. How do you define that as the work environment? And it can be outside of the company where you're working. But let's assume this is a scenario where there was an incident outside of
and your sound. Move closer to your mic.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No.
All right. Let me handle this. Patson, just pick up the question in a moment.
Okay, so as Anne comes back, Patson, maybe you want to tell us, is it easy to prove sexual harassment cases in court?
The short answer is that it is not. There's no one who is going to sexually harass in public. And you are lucky if you find just one witness. Even if the witness is there, they may not even be willing to testify. And I've read 2 cases from Kenya where the lady failed to prove because the person who saw was still employed by the organization, and they feared coming out to testify for fear of victimization and losing the job. And that's why every time you notice that there's a possibility of sexual harassment developing, start correcting your evidence, because it won't be easy. I've noted now, even on phone, and I'm sure right now, sexual harassment of physical nature is almost fading. Patting the butt or touching the parts is almost going away. People are now, as we call it, sliding in the inbox with suggestive emojis. Take the screenshots. Ensure that you're very clear on your response, so that in case it goes beyond what is acceptable, you have what to use. But also, like I indicated, courts are alive to the fact that it is not easy to prove. So the moment there are indications of that nature, some organizations actually have CCTV cameras at workplace. The way somebody is conducting around you, maybe in the corridors, could be helpful. The treatment after a rejection becomes helpful. So it's a difficult situation, but also courts have been mindful to try to lower the standard of proof. all you need is to give court a few things to hang on, transfer the burden back to the employer to see whether they have created a workspace that is safe from sexual harassment.
And I think we need to sue these people a lot more so that we can stop with this fear and just see how best we can really start talking about this and talk about it until it's no longer a crime to talk about it. And then we can start now making it a norm to actually report so that people can start knowing where they stand. Because if I look at most of the comments on the chat, there is the issue of stigma. I have seen Robley has asked that, and I've seen a few other questions on the same. Now, Patson, tell us, how do you deal with stigma? Because every time you report, you might be labeled. You will be labeled, especially for men, you'll be labeled as this guy who cannot take advances. In fact, I like what Robley has said, your transformer is defective or impotent. Somebody makes such remarks to you. But how do we deal with stigma? Because I've seen a number of questions. Somebody says, what about the person you are reporting to? And then everyone labels you because they cannot keep it confidential. But I can tell you, we've had, and probably we can share some cases we've had. We have had to investigate cases where the HR was reported to about the incident, and then they did not even reach out to us directly. They looked for a company that does this, they were referred to us, and then we were reached out and we never even went to the company at all. Even our investigation, no one knew. And we did the interviews with the victims in hotels because we wanted to really protect the whole thing. And then when we had put the case together is when we came. And somebody had asked, are statements reason enough to actually dismiss? Because somebody is saying that we are handling it theoretically. I can tell you some of it is not theoretical. Some of the things we have seen, sometimes we also need therapy for ourselves to go and do this. But maybe Patson, you can speak to stigma. How do we deal with stigma?
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's very important from the sexual harassment space. We talked about it being personal, how it affects other people get into depression. Others can't even report to their spouses if they are married. And that's why beyond the legal framework, beyond saying that we're going to implement the policies, you must have a structure to rehabilitate. You must have training on how people should behave. The starting point is the fact that there shouldn't be stigma if a matter has been handled privately and in a confidential manner. What that means is that there are very few people who have come across the information concerning sexual harassment. And at least from the Ghanaian point of view, the policies and the law, we have sexual harassment regulations require that the process should be confidential. But after that, it's important that the organizations or employers should have a framework for counseling. Counseling and rehabilitation becomes very important. Other than indicating that we'll fire you, we'll implement the law. What next for the victim? Like any other forms of discrimination, there has to be a process of the support system. Other organizations have buddy groups that would help to rehabilitate someone. What is more damaging is where employees feel that even if they report, nothing will happen. And I think suing people becomes important. Somebody has made an important comment in Uganda that almost 90 or 100% of the sexual harassment cases are settled. You feel pressure from your church, from your societies that don't embarrass this man. But in trying to protect the man, you're actually promoting a vice. And it's very shocking for almost out of 10, you'll find 7 or 8 females saying that they've been sexually harassed and we're encouraging settlement. At some point, organizations have to use some people as examples, but also ensure that there's support system beyond implementation of the policies or the law to support the victims who are being traumatized as a result of the experience.
Gosh, Anne, are you ready to answer that question?
Yes, I am. Just confirm that you can hear me now. All right. So now the person was asking on a case where it happened outside of the organization and it is reported to the police, and then no action is taken. The police release the person, but then they come back to report the issue to the HR. I want us to look at two aspects of this. There's the work of the police, which is now to look at it from a criminal point of view. And then there's the aspect of the employer that now they want to look at it from an internal process. So if you come and report it to the HR, then the HR would still be in a position to want to investigate this and do something about it from the internal point of view, but it without direct consideration of what the police is doing or not doing about the matter. So there are internal mechanisms, and also there are now the external mechanisms where the police is involved. And if the HR does their investigations and they actually find the person to have to be, how do I put it? They find that person with a case to answer, then they can still proceed to take a disciplinary action against them. Why? Because at the end of the day, the HR is the protector of the company's culture. And if employees are able to do things like this inside or outside of the work environment and get away with it, then what the message that the HR is sending to the employees is that it is okay to continue to do this. You just need to wait to leave the work environment, and then you can do your thing, and it will be none of our business. Thank you.
All right, and Kagiri, you've logged out. Are you still with us, Kagiri? Kagiri, I wanted you to speak, but I see you have left. If you're still here, please put your hand up and we'll give you an opportunity to speak. But I see Rose Gashoka. Rose Gashoka, you can unmute yourself. I'm telling you, I don't think we can actually exhaust this topic today. There are so many questions. In as much as we said the session today is ending at 9:30. But Rose Gashoka, you wanted to speak? All right, Priscilla? Priscilla, your hand is up. Priscilla, your hand is up. My teacher, Mr. Gashawa, your hand is up. You wanted to speak? Mr. Gashawa, did you want to speak? You can unmute yourself.
I'd like to actually hear from Mr. Gashawa.
I know, right?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gashawa is also not unmuting. All right, Rose Gashoka, Priscilla. Okay, Robert Otimongo, John Robert Otimongo, please unmute yourself. John Robert. Okay, Edward Wangeshi, your hand is up. Wangeshi, your hand is up.
Are they able to unmute themselves? Maybe that could be the issue.
Yes, they are. I have allowed them to talk, but I see they're not. Yeah, okay. Okay, anyway. All right, so most of them are actually putting their hands down. Alan, you wanted to speak? Alan? Okay. All right. I think they're not ready. Okay. So the thing. Oh, yes, Simon.
Yes. Good evening. Now, there's something I would like to say about sexual harassment. I'm glad Senior Counsel Patson talked about this, that many people tend to fear to report such cases, and there's no evidence whatsoever, and when presented to court, people may not present it the same way they are supposed to present it because they lack evidence. Now, I've been listening to how the presenters have been, putting it up, but we're also forgetting the other forms of, abuses. Yes, in sexual harassment, because normally you see people praying the WhatsApp and everything, but they are playing pornography in front of children, and that's a sexual harassment, you know. And these things, because people are not aware, they tend not to report. The issue of trying to put up a case when it's not so, people who try to revenge, because they know when they say I was harassed, people are going to listen to this person. So there are many cases of that kind, where someone will come and say, okay, he harassed me because I needed a job and he never gave me a job. He wanted me to do this and this. So those cases are there. And it's because of the lies which are going on and on that people have now started fearing to report these cases because they have no proof. Two, people tend now to use power because, when you have power and interest, that is where the problem comes from. Because people have power, they tend now to intimidate someone to say, okay, yes, if you don't agree with me, I will not give you a job, But again, there are those people who come with an intention to character assassinate someone, So with sexual harassment, I think we need to put up clear referral and, reporting systems where people can easily report a case and then thoroughly investigated with evidence. So I think the sensitization, as you're doing, is very key for people to understand that, yes, if I'm harassed, where do I report? And the person who is being reported should make sure that there is confidentiality. Because one of the main issues as to why we cannot report these cases because of the confidentiality perspective. You report the case today, and so it's everywhere. Everyone knows about it. So how will I be protected? You get? I've made a whistleblower. For example, if I say Simon harassed me, by the end of the day, it is already at the gate of the particular institution that Simon harassed someone. So this person is already stigmatized. But if there is clear and procedures for keeping confidentiality, then that will help us to encourage people to report these cases. And then the handling matters. Sometimes when people are handling these sexual abuse cases, they are like policemen. They are, they are already harassing before even getting to the conclusion, getting the evidence. So that's why when they mess up, someone will go to court and say,
Is it my internet or Simon's?
It's Simon's.
Tarnish my name.
Okay. Simon, thank you very much for your input. Now, there's somebody, Ajal, it's good to see you on this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Joseph Ajal, we've hosted him last year. He's wonderful, wonderful at what he does. I've also seen Shamim, the Vice President of HR Mao. It's really awesome to see you, my good friends, on the call. Now, Ajal is saying that this we have forgotten men. Yeah, Ajal, thank you for joining late. That tells me that you joined late because we have really been talking about actually, Patson has been defending the boy child a lot. And the things that they go through. Now, there's a very thin line. There's somebody who, we are talking about evidence. Edward, I'm coming back to you, but we're talking about evidence. Now, here's a situation where somebody has spanked you and there's no CCTV camera, or has made a comment, body shaming, or has just said, okay, I know a lot of women will go a lot of sexism. But then there's also the case where hoteliers, they're facing clients, they're harassed by clients. Salespeople get harassed a lot by their clients, and the client says, you give me this so that I can give you this. How can these people protect themselves? Because at this point, the harassment is not directly by your employer. It is being perpetrated by an outsider. How do we handle this? I don't know whether Anne or Patson, how can we handle this?
Let me just put in my input first, Patson. So when this is coming from an external person, the work still lies with the employer to make sure they protect their employee. at the end of the day, I am still in line of duty when this is happening. And I'm going to give an example of hoteliers. When you work in the hospitality industry, and this is where I'm going to give example of waiters. When they are in line of duty, you will find the male clients trying to spank them or trying to hug them by force or trying to grab their boobs and all that kind of stuff. It is important that as an employer, you are very clear on where you stand with the clients as far as this behavior is concerned. Because at the end of the day, the client will argue that they were intoxicated. It does not still take away the obligation of the employer to protect their employee. I have worked in the hospitality industry and I have seen firsthand this happen. And the owner of that establishment was very clear about that matter. And he actually asked the security to escort that client out. He did not want that money. Let him go and spend it elsewhere if that is the kind of behavior that he wants to bring into this kind of this establishment. So still, it is the duty of the employer to protect the employee. And the employee would still be able to take action against the employer and say they failed to create a safe environment for them. And as a result, they were sexually harassed by the client. Patson?
Yes, thank you for that, Anne, and I relate with it. Maybe to add that when you talk of spanking or one isolated incident, sometimes it's very difficult to equate it to, it might be harassment, but may not be sexual harassment. Why? Because you look at the definition of sexual harassment, it has to relate with either detriment to employment or somebody seeking favors. So if somebody has been passing in the corridor and just spanks and moves away, what does that mean? In terms of either maybe they are making, it's harassment or bullying that can make the workplace not safe. But it might be difficult to relate it to either, somebody in superior position who either who is soliciting for sexual favors. So you'll note that I think in most cases when you're drafting sexual harassment policies, you also have to add bullying and harassment that may not necessarily be sexual harassment. So while most of the policies and definitions say, spanking at the back or touching among sexual harassment, but then you must add the fact that somebody is seeking a sexual favor, either to give you a benefit or to take away the benefit or make life difficult for you. So in most cases, if you can't be protected from the space of sexual harassment, there's also harassment. You will note that most of the overt acts or covert acts that constitute sexual harassment are also actually unwanted and they're criminal acts. So if you cannot fit within the definition of sexual harassment, it can be bullying, it can be harassment, it can also be indecent assault or touch that is unwanted within the criminal space. And I like what Anne has said, that while sexual harassment relates between employer and employee, the stand of an employer towards protecting the employees of the workspace becomes important. When such a thing happens, what do you do as an employer? Do you make a statement that we do not condone this here? The same way from the sexual harassment point of view. One isolated incident becomes very important for you to come out strongly that this is not tolerated here. But if you start, pushing things under the rug, or you have a key client who comes and spanks a receptionist and you don't say anything as an employer, what you condone, you're encouraging. And when you put a position, then a message is spread that, this is not tolerated here.
Okay, and I don't know whether maybe we can take this one, because I want us to also now, because we have a lot of HR professionals here who are being brought for these cases, and sometimes they also feel stuck. They don't know what to do. So we ought to advise what can HR professionals do when they get these cases. But that is the same question as what Daisy was asking. What are the do's and the don'ts or common mistakes one can make during investigations? So I think that is combined on what HRs can do, but also there's quite a number of interesting questions on, can somebody be harassed by a same gender? Yes. I say that without, that one I'm not even about to ask Patson. That one is a direct yes. Women can harass each other, men can harass each other. It is not gender-based. It is actually people-based. Let's just call it that. So yes, you can be harassed. A lady can harass another lady, and a man can harass another man, and vice versa, or cross. Man to woman, woman to woman, man to man. They all happen. So we ought to be very vigilant. Now, I think part of what we are,
Edward,
yeah?
Edward, can I ask my questions too?
Yes, please go ahead, Edward.
Thank you so much. I have two questions. What happens if the people that the staff or the employee is supposed to report to are the predators? For instance, you're supposed to report to the HR, and the HR himself or herself is a predator, is a person who discreetly or whatever is someone who harasses employees. What happens? The other question is employers. We have seen, especially in hospitality industry, and when I say hospitality industry, it is very diverse because we have clubs, we have restaurants where even the way the waiters or the waitresses are dressed is directly from the directive from the employer themselves, such that the waitresses are actually designated to dress in miniskirts, provocative dressing, and attractive way. And actually behind the scenes, some of employers of the clubs are actually encouraging that kind of thing. Yet the employee has not been put, whatever has not been put into consideration. How do we deal with such situations? Thank you.
And Patson?
Okay, so before I get to what Edward has spoken about in terms of predators and the provocative dressing within the hospitality industry, there is something, Grace, you are talking about as far as HR is concerned with the issue of sexual harassment. And one of some of the things that HR can be able to do in these instances of sexual harassment, when I started, I said that the HR is the protector of company culture. And Patson has indicated that what you condone, you encourage, or what you encourage, you condone, something on that line. So as the HR person, when a case has been brought to your attention, do not ignore it. You need to be able to investigate this issue very discreetly. And we've spoken about confidentiality here since we started. So if the HR, this matter is brought to you and you stand on the morning briefing and you announce it to everybody, then it means you have made it extremely difficult for the employees to now come and report future cases. That is number one. Number two, there has to be consistency in the manner in which these cases are dealt with. Why is that important? Is because if a case is reported today by the operations officer as the culprit, and you take action against it, and then tomorrow it is the finance manager that is accused of sexual harassment and you ignore it, then it means there is an issue here of inconsistency. And when employees take note of this, then it becomes the fact that there are people that are above the law, and this policy only applies to certain individuals in the company and not the rest. Also, number three, as far as the HR is concerned with the implementation of policy alone does not work. That you have created a beautiful sexual harassment policy of 10 pages and you have sent it on the WhatsApp group for everybody to read does not make any difference. People do not like reading. So it is your duty as the HR, first of all, to be able to communicate this in a language that all the employees can understand. And that is why we have sexual harassment trainings that is able to summarize the policy in a way that employees can be able to get it. Number four, in terms of policy, you have to leave it. That you have a nice policy that you do not do anything about is just a piece of paper. And you also need to have check-ins with the employees to just see, are we okay as far as sexual harassment is concerned? We are not waiting for 3 years when we want to review the policy to find out whether the employees are okay. No, there have to be regular check-ins that are done by the HR, and also encourage the employees to speak up and make sure that you take action. Don't say, I will do something about it, and then you keep quiet. It is 3 months since I reported my case and nothing has happened. If that happens to me, then I will assume that you have not done anything. So make sure you take action. If you do your investigations and you do not find anything that warrants a case, call back the employee and talk to them and tell them, you reported case ABCD against so-and-so. I have done my investigation. Unfortunately, I have not found anything to support your claim. So unless there is any further evidence from you, then we can be able to proceed with the case. It builds confidence on the part of the employee, so they know that you are actually looking out for them and you have done something about it. But because you investigated and you kept quiet and you waited for the matter to settle itself, then you have failed your employees on that aspect. So I think that would probably just summarize a bit of what HR can do about this. So I'm going to leave Patson to be able to address the issue of one, what if the predator is the HR? And number two, how do you handle the issue of provocative dressing, especially in the hospitality industry, and where do you draw the line with sexual harassment? Patson?
Thank you, Anne, for those elaborate, answers. I'm also enjoying, listening from this side as well. When Edward, you talked to, first of all, what if the people who are harassing are the people whom we are supposed to report to? A well-drafted policy should probably leave HR team as a reporting line. At least from the Ugandan perspective, you will note that the policies and the regulations require that the organization should designate a person responsible for sexual harassment in charge. 2, there's also a committee. And the committee, the regulations require that actually the number should exceed 4. And of course, the question of the size of the organization and how you go about it. Now, you know that if you have a sizable committee that is supposed to investigate, and one of the persons is a predator, then they will have to recuse themselves. The challenge is that some organizations are not compliant with the policies, including how to constitute a committee. One person should never be designated to only be in charge of investigating or handling these matters. If you do, then there's a possibility that could be the predator, like you rightly stated. So I like it, the fact that sexual harassment complaint can also come in as whistleblowing. And many organizations where I've been participated in drafting policies, in addition to fraud, you indicate that actually sexual harassment complaints can also be channeled as part of whistleblowing. Where the organization is not big enough to include that, then they should have committees. And if you know that one of the predators is among the committee, then you flag it to the one person to ensure that they excuse themselves. And that becomes important. The challenge is that policies are not structured in compliance with the law. For instance, say, as long as you have 20 or more people for Kenya and 25 or more staff for Uganda, you must have a sexual harassment policy, you must have committees. And therefore, if you have such scenario where you have a predator, then you can switch. It's highly unlikely that everyone who is on the sexual harassment committee is a predator. Then you would wonder whether, in constituting that committee, they had that in mind to encourage, sexual harassment. So part of it is to ensure that you have external people to do the investigations. I've seen a lot of NGOs in Uganda utilize externals. As a firm here, we've done quite a number of forensic investigations for clients in the sexual harassment space, so that if the HR is involved or the MD, then how the report is structured, whom it is sent to, becomes an important aspect, so that you don't give the report to the perpetuator, and that report will never see the light of the day. So that becomes critical. And with the provocative dressing, I know that is a bit sexist. People have freedoms over their bodies within the confines of the culture of the organization and how they should dress. I strongly believe that provocative dressing is not a license to sexual harassment. I know as men we get disturbed. You see, beautiful lady passing and you can barely, concentrate. Control yourself. Provocative dressing is not a license to sexual harassment. I have to, repeat that to ensure that at least then it becomes an issue of breach of the company policies. If the company does not have a dress code, how are you going to reprimand somebody for dressing up in a tight T-shirt for men or a revealing dress, for women? So if that is noted, then it's the role of the HR to ensure that now the policy people are called to order in terms of how they actually conduct themselves, so that they don't invite themselves to the weaker brothers or the weaker ladies to start, harassment. So, and maybe I would want to comment more on the common mistakes. Sometimes HR people, when they're involved in the investigation, they try to talk to victims out of the complaint. This person is married, he's a church member, he's of a particular standing. This complaint is going to destroy him. Can we stop it here? It sounds a legitimate concern, but also it can send the wrong message to say that, as long as there's somebody who is superior involved, as long as, somebody higher in society, we can't complain. But in most cases, such people are actually the perpetrators of sexual harassment. So you better be cautious in talking a victim out of the complaint. And somebody has mentioned that actually in Uganda, it's a common methodology. Talk to the perpetrator, ensure that you settle it quietly. You should never even see management. But remember, sometimes the staff have actually seen the sexual harassment, and how you handle it would set the tone of the organization. So it becomes a delicate balance, but also more important to ensure that if you don't tolerate it, then you must investigate and make sure that it comes to a logical conclusion. And what can they do? I think if your budget can allow, please involve people who are outside. Sometimes the professionals, the likes of Hatara Solutions, if they can investigate a complaint for you, they are more independent than revealing or taking somebody who is in the same workspace. And there are certain things that you may not even want to reveal to them. But having a third party who is probably seen as independent helps in opening up and creating a better space. One of the person I talked to, who is very senior, indicated to me that when there was sexual harassment, she actually realized that in the organization, there were so many ladies who were suffering the same. And she knew that she would not be believed. What she did was to go and inquire from others who had suffered the same. And they made a complaint of over 15 to 20 ladies that actually had been sexually harassed. It was difficult for the gentleman to get out when you have 20 ladies ganging against you that actually over the years, they have been sexually harassed. So there are different methods on how it can be handled at workplace.
All right.
Grace, just 1 second. Just to make a comment on what Patson has put in about bringing an external person to handle these cases of sexual harassment. It brings about the aspect of objectivity and the unbiasedness in the investigations, because sometimes you may be accused of probably you are so used to the employees that the person might accuse you of not being objective. But then if you bring in an external person who does not know these people in person and he or she is meeting them for the first time, then it makes your work very easy. And even the report that they bring to you, you can be able to establish a trend. Grace and I have actually done this before for a client. And when we went to do the investigation, this is not something that had happened in 6 months. Some of the cases that had been reported had taken place in a span of about 2 years. and it was not involving one person. So even though the person that was being accused, of course, they did not accept, and they called in the name of God and their pastors in wherever they are working and all that stuff, and how much they love their wives and they can never do all this. But you look at the trend that, what are the stories, or rather what are you hearing from all these people that are accusing him of sexual harassment? Can you see a pattern here? And once you establish that pattern, then it is really hard for somebody to deny this. And if you match that with the facts of the case in terms of the environment and the surroundings and the dates and everything, then you have a clear case here. So just to close on to that, in case you are looking for people to do your investigations around sexual harassment, Atara Solutions are open to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's a question. Esther has a hearing tomorrow, and she was asking whether written statements hold water during the investigations. I've seen Anne, you have responded, but Patson, what do you think?
Actually, having statements is a very good idea. In most cases, you don't even have the statements. So if people have come out and been able to document their story, you are actually you are in a much better position than most processes, because people don't even know. They say, I will tell you this, don't quote me anyway, because they fear victimization. So if you have statements, I think you are in a much better position. At least you have documented evidence you can rely on. I've seen a couple of a common scenario from Emily, who says you have two friends, male and female. They sexually harass each other, one reports, and then all of a sudden said, we are kidding. It's akin to some of us in the profession where somebody files for divorce, then midway the lady comes pregnant, and they say, I think we've moved away from our complaint. It happens, and most cases it may be an issue of friends, but again, sometimes it can be an issue of compromise. Others are given money to drop the complaint. So there you don't have a complainant. But the challenge that if you have evidence already on file, much as there's an aspect of forgiveness from the other party, would you want to keep a blind eye from the organizational point of view? Probably not. The safer side could be, there's no complainant anymore, therefore we close the file. The other could be on the wider spectrum of the organization, especially if it came out and you want to ensure that you put out a statement that we're against it. So the strategy might depend on what you want to communicate.
That's true. That's true. Wow. Okay. So unfortunately, Anne has to log out. She's attending to another meeting. So you're gonna shine now, Patson, for another one question, and then we close. Now, Kevin, have you seen the offer from Frank? You can look for it, and then we get that done. Council, is it possible to successfully prosecute sexual harassment case?
The answer is yes, and I think from the Kenyan society, you've opened a lot for the region. I've read in the past couple of days, I've read more than 10 cases where sexual harassment claims have succeeded, and I think the highest damage has been 1.2 million Kenya shillings, in addition to others. So there's it's not hope all gone, especially considering the fact that court is alive to the fact that you want to get the best evidence, but do you have evidence? Some bit of evidence. Anne talked about are you able to establish a pattern, and most cases it may not be easy, but it is possible to prove. I've seen the reason why we don't have men in Uganda is the issue of settlement, but most cases will rotate around technology, Facebook chats, Teams chats. Then later you'll find some people who have observed on Christmas parties for the organization, or how the perpetrator has been behaving around you. And by the time you feel that this sexual harassment is going to jeopardize my job, you'll find that you have a couple of things that you can rely on. Court is alive that you want to get the best evidence. And I think for me, that's a good plus. Then the pushback is to the employer to say, what have you done in this space? Do you have a policy? Have you trained? Have you implemented it? And in most cases, if they've not done that, it also helps to build up a case for the staff in that space.
All right. And Kevin, maybe you can read out for us what's on offer from Pathway Solutions.
Okay. Today, team, Pathway Solution is offering to give 5 people who've attended this session a workplace harassment e-learning course, which is going to be complete, going to be completely via LMS. So if you are interested, we are going to do it in the order of first come, first serve. Kindly share your email with the name of the training, that is workplace harassment, to grace@atarasolution.co.ke, and you copy Mr. Frank, whose email is frank@pathwaysolutions.services.co.uk. I'll repeat that, frank@pathwaysolutionservices.co.uk. It's going to be on the chat. So if you are interested in attending this training, please share as mentioned. Back to you, Grace.
All right, thank you very much. So for you guys, please send your emails to get to win a training from Pathway Solutions on sexual harassment. And you can send me an email and copy Frank so that you get a chance to win. This offer is only for 5 people. So please, Edward, please send an email. Don't put your emails on the chat. We're going to forget the chat as soon as we get out of here. And Jacinta, your camera is on. So please send an email. It will make our work very easier. We log out and then we forget your email addresses. Please send the email to us. And then Frank has put his email. Kevin has shared mine. Please send those emails. Please screenshot Frank's email and send it to us. Now, Patson, your parting shots.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, we've got to appreciate the fact that sexual harassment is alive in societies. The people you meet, probably out of 10, 9 or 8 would be victims. And it's incumbent upon us, whether from our HR point of view or as employers or colleagues, to create a conducive atmosphere to stamp out, because the effects of sexual harassment are devastating, not only for the victim, but also for people who think might be the next victim. So it's critical to look out for policies that are supportive, do the trainings, but more important, to create the space that allows accountability, that respects dignity of everyone at the workspace. And from the employer's point of view is to understand that if an employee is successful in sexual harassment, you might be made an example. And I think like courts in Uganda are looking out for that employer. They'll make an example to the rest. So it becomes important that you have the policies, you do the training, as well as implement to ensure that once you take out that negativity, then you can concentrate on the productivity of the staff. I thank you for listening. Thank you for Grace and the team and Atara Solutions for organizing this. We really appreciate the cross-border arrangement to ensure that we synergize.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We are very, very privileged to have a network in everywhere, because we saw there was a South African here. So for that reason, then we love that we have a network in Kampala, Uganda, Tanzania, the whole of East Africa, just to say the least. And of course, the rest of the other parts of the world. And as I was talking, somebody just texted me and said, in our case, we never put the burden of proof on the victim. So I think we're just learning as we go along. We wish to have these conversations more often. And I hope that I was texting Andrew Patson. I was texting Andrew and saying, you need to organize for a webinar on sexual harassment purely for Ugandans. And we're going to do the same purely for Kenyans. If we ask you to pay, please make sure you're paying for it, because this conversation we have to continue having this conversation. I think it is going to make us, it is going to help us handle things better, and also for it to stop being a taboo conversation in the workplace. So, right, our partners are Balcon Housing, Stallion Construction Company Limited, Human Resource Management Professional Examination Board, Pathway Solution Services, Panessa Training Institute, Wicklin, Suluhu Mediation Center, Profiles International, Kapla Tito, Steadfast Quality Solutions Limited, Purpose, El Samea, and of course, to Patson. Patson, what's your farm called?
It's called Signum Advocates. Every time you see a bull behind somewhere, that's Signum Advocates. We are a business law firm, but also highly specialized in employment and labor relations. I head that department.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Patson. We have really appreciated your input. Thank you, and of course, Anne in absentia. Thank you guys for preparing for this. Thank you for being present. Thank you for starting off this conversation. And Caroline agrees with me that it shall cease to be a taboo conversation. Exactly. We are gonna take now this one. I am taking personal responsibility. I am going to lead this conversation as much as I can, because we need to have these conversations as often as possible. I also belong to Women in Security Association, where some of these things are serious in the security industry. You guys have no idea. You think tea firms are doing badly. Come to security industry and also manufacturing as well. But we shall make sure that you're trying to give as much information as we can, so that, because we are on a mission to change the world through information, and that is why we are here to get it right. So Kevin, thank you very much for your input. I think we lost Catherine along the way. Catherine is our sign language interpreter. The whole team at Atara Solutions, we appreciate you. Jacinta, you were sharing the contact, our WhatsApp group. Please join our WhatsApp group to get updated on what's happening on Get It Right with Atara Solutions. We are here every Tuesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Of course, it's 3 minutes to 10. Today, by the way, don't say it's me. Our flyer said that we are ending at 9:30. So of course we extend a bit. Normally we end at about 9:15, but today the conversation needed to continue. So we will continue having this conversation. Come to the media industry. I know, I hear you. I saw actually research that was done in the media industry, and it's something else. So let's start this conversation, please. Wherever you are, make sure that you're talking about sexual harassment. Make sure that your policies have something that helps both victims and perpetrators. Helps victims to come out, that you can address issues and then let people know to what extent is what, so that we can continue making safe places for our workplaces. All right, so thank you very much, guys. And with this, it is a lovely night. See you on Tuesday at 8 p.m. And we shall share the flyers on the conversation we're having on Tuesday. So we love you guys. Thank you for keeping it here. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. We are ambassadors to end this vice. Thank you very much. I like that. And asante sana.